You know what sucks about being a mere mortal who also enjoys D&D? I can't just run spreadsheets of randomized equations in my head for different attack rolls from creatures I didn't anticipate my players wanting to beat up. Also, I mix up my funny voices sometimes, but let me backpedal. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 and recently checked my save file one night after calling it quits. Apparently, though it hadn't felt like it, I'd blasted through nearly 24 hours of the adventure. My wisdom-dumped, scroll-hoarding, animal-loving wizard was barely level 6. We just crawled away from an iron golem fight, made a bunch of refugee friends, snuck out of a castle after murking its leaders, stumbled through some ancient ruins, beat up some slavers, befriended some mushrooms, had a party, said no to performance-enhancing slugs, and I hadn't even left the first main area. This one area and all its adventures made me look back at its real space inspiration, both into my own ways and methods of GMing a D&D game, and my experience playing it. So why do we play D&D these days? Not TTRPGs, especially now that they're becoming more and more focused on their intended playstyle and experience. No, specifically, the kaleidoscopic Dungeons and Dragons. Is it the story potential, the shared narrative with a table full of people? The role-playing of pretending to be someone different for a few hours every so often? The power escalation, the combat, the annihilation of an opponent through careful planning and/or overwhelming force? Maybe some combination? Or is it to destroy your GM, heart and soul, to see all the work and effort they put into your adventure and tell them,
"No, I want to go somewhere else. I want to do something different. What's in this cave on the other side of the world? I pickpocket the shopkeeper. What do they have? What does this book say? I have dark vision. I cast fireball. I hide. I sneak. I attack. What's their AC? I'm bored."
I've been on both sides of the 5e equation, an on-again, off-again GM for several years, and a player for just a bit longer than that. Baldur's Gate 3 has lit two fires underneath me. On the one hand, appreciating all the work that GMs put into their various games, that I have put into my games. And on the other, it makes me loathe of the players who are too easily distracted to stay on the beautiful, curated path that the GM has paved so lovingly just for them. Look, if you agree with your kitchen crew to make bread, go home and concoct the greatest bread recipe in culinary history, it's not going to matter if, day of bake, everyone else in the kitchen tells you they want to make pie instead. All I'm saying is that Baldur's Gate 3 is what players get when they let a GM prepare, and when players, in turn, honor that preparation. Let's stick to the real space for just a moment longer. The longer I've run games, the more I've learned how to optimize and automate certain parts to keep a momentum going. My joy is in the story elements, the interactions and dialogue, and in giving players the freedom to approach encounters in funky ways. When I can distill a creature's essence into a spreadsheet with a bunch of equations all spitting out d20 rolls and damage counts, I can focus on granting slack or tightening the lead, of giving more and more agency to the players without compromising me or the intended challenge of an encounter. This has been most helpful in one-shots or very short campaigns that I've run. Everyone comes to the table knowing that this is what I've prepared, and that deviation will be met with glowering and frustration. I don't know what's outside of this town I've set up because the plot is inside that town. Just get in the town, go have an adventure. Some might call it railroading, but I call it focus. I also love longer form campaigns and the storytelling potential of that format. Country-spanning adventures of discovery, love, and horror, all neatly organized in my back pocket, full of potential for the overarching narrative and players' potential subplots. Of course, then there's all the townships, people, situations, and all the havoc that can be wrought within. Maybe a shopkeeper demanded fair compensation for the goods in their shop. Hope you can wing how much HP they have before they get fireballed. Also, what did they have on their corpse? What's left in the shop? Did anyone hear the commotion? How much HP do they have? How many guards are around? How soon until they get here? What weapons do they have? What damage are they rolling? How much did we need to be welcome in this plot-relevant city anyway? And everything devolves into a Benny Hall skit faster than we can roll a wisdom saving throw for our own sanity. There have been any number of times where I've set up the perfect thematic set pieces and opponents for my players, but then they found some weird backdoor. They slink around it, or blow it up, or consider how to diplomatically engage with something I had fully intended to be a combat encounter alone. And maybe their reasoning, or the environment, the circumstance, is sound. You can't really justify saying no to it. But the encounter you had in the chamber is a dud. As GMs, we can reuse our hard-wrought prep and stat blocks, but sometimes it was all created special, customized, tailored to this point in your adventurer's journeys. It feels like we wasted our efforts, our focus on something that, in the grander narrative, isn't appreciated. Now, like I said, Baldur's Gate is what you get when you let your GM prepare and then honor that preparation. Baldur's Gate is prepared for everything. Any story you would want to tell or live through, it is prepared to let you live. Everything from adorable animals to townsfolk, guards and mercenaries, golems, dragons, everything has HP. Stats, strengths, weaknesses, features, they have it all. They have inventories. As long as you're sneaky, you can pickpocket anything that has pockets. Everything is prepared to be interacted with, one way or another. The lore is pertinent and relevant to the adventure you're on, so long as you're asking the right person the right questions. No fumbling over notes or tripping over inconsistencies. You want lore? You get lore. Every book, from history to religious texts to stories to flump mating rituals, is readable. Maybe not Skyrim levels of readable, but you're getting a sizable snippet in every book you pick up. No at-table panicking required. Even within this one region, the enemies scale around manageable thresholds. If you make a hostile beeline for the goblin encampment too quickly, you might find yourself outnumbered, outgunned, and mashed into paste. But if you explore the other areas before then, you gain more experience, more context, and you become more ready for the threats further into the region. Every character has their own personality, speech patterns, their own voice, their own individual way of communicating with you, with others, all tailored to them for your immersion. Nobody has to keep the voices straight because they're all just there, ready for you to trigger them. But maybe you don't care about the conversation. Buddy, Baldur's Gate has an on-site button. Hit that sucker, you'll cut off whoever's talking and take a swipe at them. And unlike me, the game won't be upset at you for cutting off some dialogue that it worked really, really hard on. On a larger scale, the location walls serve to keep players focused and in the sweet spot of balance, riding the edge between challenge and fun, on my balanced playthrough at least. You can try to power through into the Western Mountains despite the warnings that you might not be ready yet, but you run the risk of being flattened en route. The game won't fudge the rolls like a more merciful GM. If you're not ready for what's around the corner, you're gonna have a bad time. The game is prepared, but it tells you, to your face, that you might not be. Similar vein, but unlike many other tactical games, Baldur's Gate doesn't come with an undo function. Every choice you make, every move you make, you have to own it and move forward with it. It asks that you be as prepared as you can be before diving in. Of course, you can save scum your way into an ideal encounter, but the highs and lows, both in and out of combat, are what define a session of D&D. The scramble of trying to recoup your mistake in combat, of owning the fact that a character thinks differently of you for failing to persuade them, all make the story feel more real. Flaws make for great characters, and mistakes make for amazing stories. Baldur's Gate is prepared to let you fail in any number of ways without letting it tank the story being told. That's the core of the Baldur's Gate experience. It is programmed for murder hobos, rich stories, roguish impulses, deep conversation, snappy combat, tactical planning, romance, swashbuckling, alliances, betrayals, intrigue, and much, much more. You can bend the story it tells with items, spells, equipment, and proficiencies, but you cannot truly break it to your ideal story. You will be told a story all your own. Baldur's Gate is prepared to tell 1,000 different stories without compromising itself or your story. Consider, though, that the main separation between us flesh and bone GMs and Baldur's Gate is not preparation, it's programming. If you're not experiencing this story, no matter how many its permutations, then you're not playing Baldur's Gate. What do we lose in a programmed campaign? In-jokes, the panicky comical improv on both sides, the memorable chaos as power shifts from GM to player back and forth, the deus ex machina of a kind and benevolent GM just to keep momentum up and engagement high. The true individuality of an adventure. The kind of stories you'd tell your friends and they shake their head with an "only in D&D," and arguably a sense of respect. Shenanigans and tomfoolery hit different when you're pushing the limits of an impartial video game program rather than one beleaguered game master. A ways back, I ran a short campaign for my friends, itself a product of an evil one-shot where they called my bluff at the end, refusing to fight each other for their Dark Master's favor. I have always imagined each permutation of that game and all of my best laid plans since then as a train on a railroad. Railroading has a bad rap in the TTRPG space. It feels too linear, too constricting, too dull in a game where I can go anywhere, do anything. There are some GMs out there that can absolutely off-road an adventure or a campaign, masters of game-based conversational and circumstantial improv, able to wing almost every encounter, every ripple, every wrinkle in their best-laid plans. The chances are very, very high that you are not one of those GMs or are not playing with one of those GMs. That's not a bad thing. That's just being human. Think of the train itself. There can be sleeper cars, dining cars, engines, storage cars, coach, lounge, not to mention all of the myriad people aboard it with you. You have almost free reign of the train and its cars. GMs can give you free reign of this slice of the world, people, conflicts, monsters, plot, whatever. But the moment you jump off the train, you're in uncharted waters. Your GM isn't prepared for that, and the experience risks suffering for it. But if you stick with them for this section, on this train ride, you'll get to the station and board a new train on a new track, prepared just for you. It's a similar principle in Baldur's Gate. The crash region where players start is one big train ride on one big railroad. You can travel here, there, all over the place while still being on this one track. On that train, you can flit between different cars. The Goblin Camp, the Druid Circle, the Swamp, the Villa, the Underdark. Granted, you might feel locked out of certain cars until you're adequately leveled, but that is with intent to maximize your enjoyment. To make it as smooth a ride as possible, like how a human GM might fudge dice rolls or adjust stat blocks on the fly. It's all in service to the experience, no matter who or what is running the game. Your GM is not a 150 gigabyte behemoth of a game. They are but a mere mortal and only programmed for so much at a time. Focus is the greatest asset a GM has to give to the game, so let them focus. Or even better, help them focus. An absolute bloodbath, a series of heists from petty to grand, a shadowed mystery, an epic tale, a low-level misadventure. They're trying to make the adventures as fulfilling for you as it is for them to run it, and it's all the more effective when they know what you want. Your adventures may not be as perfect and polished as a romp through Baldur's Gate, but with a bit of foresight, it will be a much smoother ride. That's the thing about railroads. It's not just one track. It's a network going in all different directions to all different destinations on all sorts of adventures. Hop aboard. Adventure awaits.